And welcome back to my office today. Today I thought I would discuss the camera that I use for taking stills photography when I'm out in the field, and my love of a system called Micro Four Thirds. So today's vlog is going to be discussing that system, why I use it and the positives behind it. I'm just going to discuss my reasons and why I use a system called Micro Four Thirds. It's a system that was developed in part by Olympus and some other manufacturers such as Panasonic, and it's a derivative of the old Four Thirds system, and essentially it's called Four Thirds because it's a 4x3 sensor, and that's where it gets the system the name from. But one of the criticisms it gets, the 4 thirds sensor, is because it's a little bit smaller of a sensor than the aps-c and a full frame sensor, so it does get a little bit of a bad reputation for being a smaller sensor, but it's a great little system if you want to use it. What I'll do first is obviously I'll tell you a little bit about my backstory and my camera history. Probably about 15 years ago I decided to buy my first digital SLR after playing about with small digital cameras before I'm really getting into taking digital photography. Back in that day I didn't really know what system I wanted to use. I didn't really know much about digital SLRs, but I knew that having reading online forums and seeing photographs from other photographers, that the next positive step up from a small compact camera was going up to a digital SLR camera. And it was around about the time where digital SLR cameras were becoming very much mainstream and everybody was converting from film to digital SLRs in the same way that a lot of people are now converting from, say, digital SLRs over to mirrorless systems such as the Canon EOS R and Micro Four Thirds and the Sony systems as well. So I went down the Canon route because basically at the time there was really two main brands that were really big out there. I know there were some other small brands, but the main two brands were Canon and Nikon. And if you asked anybody, they would either say go down Nikon or Canon route. And there was two factors that really brought me into the Canon system. One was that there was a really good price on a Canon 350D and 2 kit lenses, which I got at the time. But the other factor was that I read a lot of online forums and I spoke to a lot of people who advised me that the best lenses out there at the time was the Canon lenses. Canon had really good glass at the time, but I think that's gone by the way now because there's an awful lot of people out there. There's an awful lot of manufacturers making very good lenses, the likes of Sony and Canon and Nikon, and even some of the smaller manufacturers. There's some of the lesser known manufacturers such as Tamron and Sigma are creating some really fantastic lenses out there. So the choice of lens I don't think is that important on the camera. I think it's more about the camera, what you do. But I think one of the things you do when you decide what system you're going to go for, it's a system that you have to decide on because it's a system that you're probably going to be stuck with for a number of years. Because one of the great things about SLRs and mirrorless, as I say, is that if you tend to stick to one system, you can essentially use the same lenses over and over and just swap bodies as they improve and add new features. But I think also one of the things about cameras these days is that models don't tend to have massive upgrade features. So going from, say, you know, an 80D to a 90D for a Canon isn't that much of a deal breaker today. But I think going from, say, a camera that's 4 or 5 years old to a camera today is a big, massive. It is quite a big upgrade. It does bring a lot of features. Basically, I spent probably 15 years using a Canon, various different Canon cameras, and upgrading the body as I went along. And eventually, I was using a Canon 80D. But what I wanted to do is I wanted something light and compact that I could take out and do street photography with, and also a camera that would I could use every day on my daily to take out with me as a daily carry, so to speak. And I did try with a Canon and a 50mm nifty 50 lens, and that was just it was just too heavy and cumbersome for me. So I decided to go down the route of buying a small mirrorless camera. And at the time, mirrorless cameras were getting a bit of a bad reputation, mainly due to battery life. They were just, because a lot of mirrorless cameras have LCD screens for both at the back of the camera and the viewfinder, they were very battery intensive. But I think as more and more mirrorless cameras are coming onto the market and more manufacturers are focusing more on the mirrorless systems, the systems are getting better, and the battery life is improving more and more. I'll be honest with you, my Olympus, I take 3 batteries out with me, and it's quite often I've come home from a day shooting and I've had, you know, a battery left charged, so I can get away with, you know, literally having 2 batteries taking 2 batteries out with me. I take 3 out as a you know, as a precaution, and sometimes obviously if I forget to charge one, I've also got the 2 cameras there. So about 18 months ago I decided to buy an Olympus EM1ii Mark II, and there was a very good offer at the time where I got the camera, a 14 to 40mm lens and a 40 to 150 telephoto lens, 2 kit lenses, and I think it was only about maybe £500 for that system, and that brought me into the world of micro four thirds. And what I was always under the impression is that because micro four thirds had a smaller sensor, they were an inferior system compared to an aps-c or a full frame equivalent. And what I did then is I had 2 dedicated setups where I would use my 80D for the portfolio shots, so to speak. So if I was going out doing landscapes, I would take that out with me, thinking that it would be producing a better image because it's got a bigger sensor. And the one thing that was doing me with the 80D was the weight. The weight was absolutely, it was, you know, causing a lot of problems with my back and my, you know, carrying that amount of weight about with me. And that's one of the things I loved about the micro four thirds system. It's a really small, compact system, and the weight difference is unbelievable. You may not see an amount of one of the things I've heard from people saying is that when they've picked a camera, a very similar mirrorless camera, and they've picked up their own digital SLR camera, is that there's not much of a weight difference. I think the real weight savings comes when you've got 3 or 4 lenses sat in your bag. If you're carrying, say, you know, a wide angle lens, a medium, you know, angle lens, and a telephoto lens, and some of the telephoto lens you get on the normal SLRs are quite substantial and quite heavy. So the real weight savings you get from carrying a mirrorless camera is when you've got the whole system. And for me, that was the big draw to Micro Four Thirds. And as I was using my Micro Four Thirds camera day in, day out, I was actually more happy to go out and use the 4/3 camera because of the weight difference. The weight difference was so much different. I could literally, on my normal day to day, I've got a small 22 litre low pro bag, which I carry 4 lenses in, my camera and my vlogging setup, which is obviously what I discussed in my last video. And I take that everywhere. I take that everywhere with me every day. I go into places like Liverpool and Manchester on trains and buses, and I take that full kit with me, and it goes with me everywhere. The only time that differs is when if I'm going, you know, to a place that's more remote where I need to take extra kit, you know, coats, jackets, food, drinks, water, things like that. Places where you might not be able to nip into a shop and get a bottle of water. I use a bigger low pro bag, which also gets all my kit in, but it also allows me to carry extra kit. But most of the time, I walk around with a small 22 litre bag, and that goes to work with me every day. It goes into towns and cities with me, and it's such a versatile system. And one of the great things about it is that I don't come home with my back aching, and that's such an important thing for me, is that if you're using a camera system and we can all worry about buttons and settings and what we use and how quality of the photographs it produces, but if you're going out and that camera system is difficult to use, or it's causing you problems with your physical body, and you're getting to a point where you don't want to use that system because it's making you feel unpleasant, you might sit there and say, well, I'm not going to go out photographing. So the important thing we seem to forget when we buy a camera system, when we use a camera system, is not only does it take good photographs, but is it easy to use, and is it a pleasant experience? And that's one of the things that I've really enjoyed about switching over to Micro Four Thirds. The camera that I use now is an Olympus EM1 Mark II. What I did was obviously, because I was using the 2 dedicated setups before, I decided to trade in all my Canon camera equipment and go down to one system, the Olympus. I'm still using the same kit lenses that I got with the EM10, because one of the great things about Micro Four Thirds is that the lenses will fit every Micro Four Thirds camera out there, even the likes of, you know, from Panasonic and Olympus and Panasonic. You can switch lenses from both systems with no problem whatsoever. And I upgraded to the EM1, bought the body, and traded in the other cameras that I had, to go all in on Micro Four Thirds. And then I used the extra money to buy some extra equipment, such as, you know, a good set of filters. I used it to buy a little bit better of a vlogging rig. I bought the microphone that I'm using here, the Rode video mic. I bought that with that. So it's a decision that took me a while to make, but it's a decision that I don't regret doing whatsoever. Having the Olympus, as I said before, has made me go out and take more photographs, but I'm also quite surprised at the actual quality I get from the photographs. I think one of the things that photographers do when you go out is there's this idea that you have to jump into full frame and you have to have a full frame camera, and while full frame is probably the best decision for a vast majority of professional photographers out there, people who are, you know, taking photographs from magazines and books and, you know, having them on billboards, and the printing has to be massive, then a full frame is probably the best way to go. But for most amateur photographers, and basically I'm only an amateur photographer, I very rarely print my images above, say, 24 by 16, you know what I mean? Or A3, I think the biggest print I've ever done is A3. So for me, a full frame was frankly wasted on me. And I think there's a lot of photographers out there who don't use the full capability of their camera. So that's a big thing that I considered when I decided what system I'm going to use, is that will I need a full frame camera? Will I use the full capability of that full frame camera? And the answer for me was no. I'm quite lucky in the fact that I've produced some quite really good images from my Micro Four Thirds camera. I've got some lovely prints on my wall that I'm very, very, very proud of, that have come from the Micro Four Thirds camera. And there's a number of videos I've seen out there where people have been creating massive prints from Micro Four Thirds camera. I was watching a video from a guy called Steve O'Nine's who used a Olympus, I think it was an EM5, and he was printing quite big photographs. What I'll do is I'll put a link down to the description to show you that video and some of the prints he was printing. I'd love to show you that, but I don't have the capability to print above A3. The printer that I've got is no bigger than A3, so that's the biggest print that I can do. But I've seen some, you know, really large prints from Micro Four Thirds, and they're absolutely fantastic prints. So my decision to go into Micro Four Thirds is a decision that I'm really, really happy with, and it's a decision that I would make again tomorrow. And the one thing I want to stress to people is that because it's a smaller sensor doesn't mean that it's an inferior camera. I think a lot of the time it's more about the photographer using the camera than the camera itself. If you found this video useful, and if you're thinking of buying a Micro Four Thirds camera, Olympus or a Panasonic G8, you know, one of the G models on the Panasonics, I want you to, you know, if you ever consider buying one, then please, you know, have a look at them and don't rule them out because they're not you know, full frame. They get a lot of bad press about being inferior, and that's just a thing that I've not encompassed, and it's a thing that I've not found. So what I'll do for this video as well is I'll pop a few images on the screen that I've took with my Micro Four Thirds camera, my old EM10 and my the new EM1 that I've got now. Yeah, so I hope you enjoyed that video. I hope you found it useful, and I hope it helps you consider if you're making a decision to jump into the world of Micro Four Thirds. There are some really good cameras out there and some really, really good bargains to be had. Some of the smaller Olympus cameras can be picked up for a few £100 now, which is a lot less than, you know, some of the bigger SLRs. So it's definitely you know, a system that, you know, if you want to jump into a small, light, compact mirrorless camera that might be a little bit cheaper than some of the you know, the equivalent Canon and Nikon videos, then it might be worth considering a Micro Four Thirds. You know, I'm not doing this. The one thing I want to say about this in the last video is that I would never, I've not been paid to actually do this. This is kit that I use day in, day out, and it's kit that I've took out and, you know, used in anger, so to speak. So it's definitely worth, so I know, I can speak from experience that the kit that I use is really good and really works for me. But obviously cameras are a very, very personal thing. They're very personal to each person, and, you know, you can probably ask 20 people in the forum what camera to buy and they come up with 20 different answers. So I think sometimes picking the right camera is about making your own decisions round about your own life, and if it's a, you know, whether it works for you. Like I said earlier, the biggest decision for me was weight. I don't come home with an aching back anymore having a Micro Four Threads camera in my bag. But that's a decision for you guys to make out there, and if it's, you know, I hope this has helped you, you know, if you're deciding to use a Micro Four Threads camera, to jump in and have a play with a Micro Four Threads. So yes, so I hope you found that video useful. If you want more of these and you want me to add more of the, if you want me to include more videos using the Micro Four Threads system, I'm quite happy to do that. Please leave a comment below if you want me to do that. And hopefully, if you like this video, give it a thumbs up, give it a subscribe, and I'll see you again sometime soon.